Hi there. Welcome to My Other's Keeper. Um, I would absolutely love to introduce you to my friend Dave, but he's not here. So we're going to start out on our own today, and we'll pick him up if he is able to join us. I seem to recall last time we spoke, he was going to be down in Florida visiting his mom, so he might be a little busy with that. So we'll see how it goes. Um, Dave's not here, man. You're right. He is not. Um, anyway, hi, Brian. Hi, Indigo. Hi, Crystal. Nice to see you all. I'm so glad you guys have come. Um, so let me just tell you how my day has gone. It went, it was a day. This morning, actually at noon, I had a presentation about mental health to give. And so I left home. It's been snowing here and the roads aren't great and my tires aren't great. So I left really early. So I went home or left home. I went to Starbucks, got myself a beverage, and then went straight to the venue to do my presentation, which is a wonderful thing. Except I noticed on my way that as I got to um, Starbucks, I had forgotten my headphones. And that's just unusual for me. So it's like, oh, ugh, what a day. So then I get to the venue and I go and I look to take my phone out of my purse because that's where my presentation is. It's on my phone right here. And then I look in my purse and I'm like, it's not in my purse. Oh, great. The place I was giving my presentation was at a hospital downtown, not a great neighborhood in Saskatoon. So what did I do? I ran back out to my car and I looked all over in my car and my phone wasn't there. Like, great. Yes. I either dropped it somewhere along the way or I left it at Starbucks, which was far enough away that it would have been bad to try go back and then come back down. So I went inside the hospital, called security, or not called, but I went to the security booth and I'm like, hi, could I please borrow your phone? I left my phone, I think at Starbucks, and I think I would really like to give them all, a shout to see if it's there. So I called, and lo and behold, it was there. And it's like, oh, great. Now I have to give a presentation, and I don't have my script. My script is kind of it packs a lot of information into a short period of time, which is great because if I go off of that script, it takes longer than, say, 10 minutes. It can take 20 minutes or longer to tell my story. Unfortunately, you only get 10 minutes to do. So I had to wing it. It was me and three others, one, two, three others, two others were presenting. And I had to go on and I'm like, okay, I'm going to look incredibly professional because I'm doing it without notes because I lost my phone and that's where my notes are. So we all had a good chuckle. Fortunately, we were also talking to nurses at that hospital. So they were medical professionals. They understood a lot. Um, so that was great, except I set my timer to go at 10 minutes. And it's like, oh, great. I am about halfway through my presentation. Yeah, I really needed my notes. So, you know me, I go off on little rabbit trails all over the place. So that's kind of how my morning, early afternoon went. I came home and basically just kind of passed out. Oh, I went to go get my nails done after that and found out that my nail lady, who I thought was supposed to be on time, or it was supposed to be arriving and coming to work on Monday, is actually going to be at work tomorrow. So I'm going to get my nails done tomorrow. So it's not all bad news. I'm going to get my nails done tomorrow. And what can I say? I'm a little bit picky about those. And I just love the way she does her work. So that's awesome. Yeah, exactly. It was a chaotic day, body illusion. And hi, Janet. Nice to see you as well. Misha, great to see you here. Who else do we have? We've got Brian, Crystal. Have I said hi to Crystal yet? Hi, Crystal. Yeah, so that's the kind of day it's been. So right now, David not being here is just par for the course. So I have a number of you in the chat, and we can choose to either have a visit. So one or two of you can come on and we can just talk about how life has been going, and maybe how life has been going leading up to the holiday season. In Canada, we've already had our Thanksgiving. In the United States, it's coming up next week, I believe, on the 28th. And so we could talk about how life maybe becomes chaotic and what we can do to kind of smooth through these things. Or I can simply give you my mental health presentation, and I will be able to expand where I need to expand and kind of go on a couple rabbit trails. So let me know in the chat. I will, if I could post a poll, that'd be great. Shows my nails aren't, they're not very cool right now. They're just kind of boring. They've got purple and kind of a teal color on right now. So yeah, no, my nails tomorrow are going to be gorgeous. So I'm really looking forward to that. She does an excellent job. The technician she was gone for a month back home to Vietnam. And so the young lady she had replacing her, I was told, yep, she's going to be great. She was an excellent nail technician. So I gave her what I thought was a fairly simple picture of a dragonfly on a nail. I mean, you've got four wings, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a body and a background color. It was not good. It was really not good. So, oh well. Hi, Mac. Nice to see you. Okay, so Indigo, you say presentation. Number 2, visit with each other, or 3, other. So if you want the presentation, put a 1 in the chat. If you want to visit with each other and maybe talk about holidays coming up, put a 2. And if you have a different idea, I'm open to it. Put a 3 and let me know what it is. So that'd be great. So basically, I'm just going to continue with my nail story until I see from you guys what we're going to do tonight. So basically, with my nail lady, she is amazing. All I have to do is go on Pinterest. It's like, okay, I want this, 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 this. And so we do, like, I just find a picture, I text it to her like a day or two ahead of time, and she can look at it and she can follow it. And I've only ever once in 7 years been disappointed with how she did my nails. Once in 7 years. So yeah, she is fabulous. And she doesn't charge any more than the other techs in her salon. So it's just a really great way to do things. I love her. She's awesome. I've gotten to know her and her husband. Let's go with 4, all of the above. Okay, so I'm seeing a number of you want to hear my presentation, and I did it kind of right at the beginning of my channel, but it's going to be a little different. When I did it before, it was simply a recording. It was simply a video. There wasn't engagement in a chat or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present, and then I'm going to go down my rabbit trails. And then at the end, if you have comments or questions, please put them in the chat. Wrenches, if you see questions that look really appropriate or that really need to be asked, put a star on it, and we can look in the starred comments. I think I can look in the starred comments. Yes, so if you star it, then there will be starred comments that I can go back to and answer the questions for. So that would be great. So I'm going to start out the way I start out all the time. And I'm going to do reading a fair bit because otherwise I forget what I'm going to say. And that happened a fair bit this afternoon. It was a little embarrassing. But um, a lot of what's in here is really important and it needs to be said the way it's written. So I just want to introduce myself. Hi, I am my other's keeper. I am, I don't start with this part, but I am the keeper of my brothers, my sisters, my friends, my parents, my children, my husband, not necessarily in that order. Um, and what does it mean to be a keeper? To be a keeper, the way I define it for myself, to be a keeper is to be a person who can be trusted to talk to when you're not doing well, a person you want to celebrate with when things are going well, a person who um, you want to have on your team because you know that it's going to be better if they're with you. So, hi, Mary, nice to see you. So, that's what to me being a keeper means. So, I am my other's keeper. Y'all are keepers too. So, you are my keepers. But I'm going to start this presentation about mental health, talking about a physical injury that I sustained in about 2015. In 2015, my boss decided to gaslight me. I was teaching English as a subsequent language to adults, immigrants and refugees, that kind of stuff. Um, so I was doing a great job. Ask any of my students, I was doing a great job. Ask any of my coworkers, they loved having me sub for them because they would know I did a great job. My boss decided to gaslight me and tell me that I wasn't doing a great job, that I didn't know how to teach, that I didn't know how to do reporting, that I didn't know blah, 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 blah. He gave me a and this is the ad lib part. He gave me a uh, verbal warning that happened to be written down to go into my file. And on that warning, it said that this is a disciplinary action that is, and all options are on the table, including termination. That was the first verbal warning I got. So that, yeah, my boss was an a-hole. He really, really was. Um, so that was held over my head. It was supposed to only be a 6 to 8 week period that I had to worry about this. So at about 6 weeks, I had a major panic attack when it hadn't cleared up and it hadn't um, resolved itself. So what's a girl to do? You have a panic attack, and a diabetic who was not insulin dependent at the time became insulin dependent. I had no idea that my blood sugars were that tied to my emotional, or now what I realize is my physical brain health. The hormones up here that keep me tightened together also affect my pancreas. So that was, like I told him, that was a bit of a kick in the head. So instead of 6 to 8 weeks, it went on for 9 months. 9 months. They were supposed to do occasional random drop-ins to the class just to see how things were going. And so I would wait, and every day I would sit there and I'd go, okay, is today going to be the day? Is today going to be the day? For 9 months. It was because of that that I had the nervous breakdown that I did. He walked into the teacher's office one day and he was talking to somebody. My office, or my desk, was way in the far corner. You couldn't even see it from the office door. There was shelves and stuff in between that. I heard his voice and instantly, boom, tears, just crying like you wouldn't believe. It wasn't loud sobbing, but it was just like floodgates, and I was drenched in sweat, drenched in tears. I was shaking uncontrollably, and I mean, like this. I'm not kidding. It was that severe. Um, and it was probably one of the worst things I have ever experienced. One of, I have a couple others, but don't need to worry about those today. Um, so I uh, I excused myself from the room. Actually, no, I ran out of the room and I drove. No, I went out to my vehicle and somebody phoned my husband, and I had the vehicle that day. He didn't have a vehicle with him that day. So he walked, oh boy, for those who know the city that I'm talking about, so that would be Crystal, who knows this city, from the north end of Circle Drive downtown. So if you go, what is it, probably a 8 to 10 mile walk or run or whatever it was that he had to do. And he did it in record time. He knew it was a big, big deal. There was no question that I was in crisis. So he showed up for me even when like he could have complained and had to call a cab or something like that. But no, he manned up in a huge way and he was right there for me when I needed him. So this physical injury, this mental breakdown, like I said, it affected my diabetes. Like just it took me from not needing insulin to needing a lot of insulin actually in a short period of time. It's affected my body's general pain level, the way my back feels. I have recurrent headaches. My mental clarity and cognition are also impaired. Um, I was very clear before that, and now I'm not. Um, I was in bed 18 to 20 hours. Let that sink in. In bed, not necessarily sleeping, but I couldn't get my hiney out of bed 18 to 20 hours for almost a full year. So, just to look at me, you wouldn't think anything was wrong. Um, you see me on my channel, and I'm generally fairly put together, and I'm not a blubbering mess, and I mask. I am able to put on a happy face. When he broke me, I wasn't able to wear a mask at all. I was not a crier really at all. Like I would cry, but I wasn't a crier. Now I'm a crier. Anyway, so I had that nervous breakdown, and that piled onto several chronic illnesses that affect similar areas of my brain. So, bipolar type 2, undifferentiated anxiety disorder, which means that instead of generalized anxiety, in that I worry about everything and it's not just any one thing that makes me worry. I'm not a worrier. I'm not. But my body attacks my nerve endings because somewhere deep inside, there's an anxiety going on that I don't recognize. But my body recognizes that there's a panic. So it sends a zap physically down my nerve endings. I'm now on medication for that. Haven't had that in quite some time. So that's good. Um, I am a calm mountain stream with volatile undercurrents. That's absolutely right, Brian. You are a poet, that's for sure. Um, so, um, food addiction. I also live with food addiction. You also won't hear me say I suffer from, because at the end of the presentation, I will say it again, but I don't suffer from mental illness. I live with it. So food addiction, ADHD, which I didn't know at the time I had, and PTSD. This PTSD I now have from two sources. The first source was a sexual assault that happened when I was only 4 years old. I'll talk about that a little later. And then again, from this particular instance at work, I still cannot drive in certain areas downtown without feeling like I'm going to puke. And that was in 2015. So almost 10 years ago. Actually, it would have been 9 years ago, right about this time of year. So almost exactly 9 years ago. But what happens? So the wonderful thing is, though, that this doesn't scratch the surface of how interesting, complex, or funny I am. I don't let any of these injuries define me or control me or limit me as much as I'm able. Yeah, they limit, I have limits, but they don't limit me, the real me, the whole me. My family history consists of many people with diabetes, alcoholism, and disorders, including depression, ADHD, eating disorders, and bipolar disorder. What can I say? We come from a family of neurodivergent people, which are frankly just a lot more interesting than boring neurotypical people. And you're right, Indigo, my body kept the score, that's for sure. Um, yeah, body illusion with my anxiety, panic attacks hindered my breathing. So it affected her lungs. Yes, absolutely. It took a crap on her. Yeah, absolutely. Anxiety is literally physically crippling. And I know it very, very well. Um, One of the earliest memories I have, though, is of kneeling beside the bed in my mom and dad's bedroom and praying with my mom in the pink room. I was only about 3 years old. So it didn't occur to me that this is the same room that I would go in like 100 other times in the day and just play or whatever. This room was pink. She had a pink bed sheet over the window, so it turned the room pink. And at that time of day, the bed sheet was over the windows, so it was closed, and prayed with her in the pink room. I really, really believe that this God based foundation protected me and gave me great peace and strength as I went through a lot of trauma in my life, including the first one I can actually remember. I'll get into pre memory in a minute, but the first one I can remember happened when I was only about 4 years old. My family was out on a camping trip, and my um, my cousins and my sister and I were staying in a trailer. And the girl cousin and my sister are only 1 month apart in age. The boy cousin and me are like 6 years different in age. Well, they had the curtain drawn on the top and they were giggling and laughing and whatever else like that. Um, and then he decided that he was going to have his way with me. He wasn't very old, but Crystal can tell you that a kid at 10 years old, they can really know what they're doing. They don't have to be 12 or 13 to be able to figure out what to do down there. And so I was fighting him off, and I was just this little girl, and I was screaming and yelling, and my sister and his sister were in the top bunk laughing at me. They just thought we were wrestling around, and they thought that, it was just all fun. He was assaulting me and they were laughing at me. I had no help. I have been essayed a number of times since then. And as much as I tell people you need to go to the authorities, you need to address this, you need to take care of this, of all the times I have been essayed, I've never gone to the authorities, not even the time when Crystal's brother did it to me. I didn't remember that attack though until I was about 16 years old. It was totally gone from my memory. I was 16 years old and I was in the living room with my mom, and just suddenly I was 4 years old again and I was that little girl. And I said to mom, Mom, this is what happened. She says, No, it didn't. You would have said something by now. I know it was a real memory and not a false or implanted memory. Those are can happen as well. But I know that it was real and not false or implanted because I verified the situation with my sister. She remembered the camping trip and laughing and all of that stuff. She doesn't remember it anymore because that's a long time ago now. That's 40 something years ago. So she doesn't remember it anymore. But when I talked to her about it 25, maybe 30 years ago now, she remembered. And she remembered the situation, but she didn't know about the assault that was going on at the time. And when she found out, she was just beside herself. It was bad. As a child, my sister and I grew up in a dysfunctional home, to say the least. My dad was an alcoholic. He messed around on my mom throughout their entire marriage, from what I understand. My sister Tanya, my sister Glennis and I grew up together. My sister Tanya was born 4 months before I was, and she was adopted out. She had a different mom than me, but we had the same dad. And so she was born 4 months before me. And as a child, we didn't really have any concept of good or bad or anything like that. As a kid, you think these things are good, these things are bad. You're right. The brain definitely protects you. Um, so we were on. I don't know how or when or why, but for some reason, our dad told us about. Oh yeah, I there's other kids out there that I've got. Like I would bet you anything. And so through our entire lives, Glennis and I, we knew that there were other siblings. There was no way to find them. 23andMe ancestry and all that had to take 50 years to happen. But no, we knew that there was somebody out there. We just didn't know when or where or whatever we could see. Um, so we grew up in this really dysfunctional home. Something else I don't talk about very often is that my dad was a cop when I was little, and he was fired from our national police department, the RCMP, when I was a baby. And if you know anything about the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, you know how hard it is to get fired from that place. They are very much like the military. They take care of their own and they will discipline their own. My dad got fired from there. So that might tell you a little bit of the kind of character he had. Later on, he became a pastor. Yes, this guy became a pastor of a Baptist church. And I know that I've mentioned that before because I've also talked about the fact that he was the pastor of the church where Crystal and I met. Um, so before I go any further, I need you all to understand it's not God's fault that my dad was a terrible human being. Let me repeat that. It's not God's fault that my human father was a terrible human. My dad made choices. He made some terrible, terrible choices. But God protected me through so much. God didn't take away the troubles. He didn't take away the abuses. He didn't take away so much that people say, oh, if you're a Christian, then life's going to be good. Or I'm going to become a Christian. My life's all going to be great. No, 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 no. Doesn't take it away. He protects you, will carry you, and he will love you and give you strength and courage that you had no idea you could ever possess. Um, yeah. So, and I'm only on the third paragraph now of my presentation. So this might be a while. I can trace the symptoms of bipolar back to when I was in about grade 7. I was running home from school in this teeny weeny little town where we lived, and I tripped on the sidewalk and I fell, boom, flat on my face, hit the front of my head really, really hard. And I just was, woo, dazed. It was amazing. It was just wild. And I went home and I don't remember if I went back to school that after. I may not have gone back to school that afternoon. But really, we didn't think much of it because we had no idea about the consequences of concussion or the long-term effects that we now know happen with concussion. Um, After this time, though, I can clearly recall deep panic attacks and depressions setting in. Um, there was a fight. There were a number of fights in my house, and one of them was my dad and I fighting across the kitchen table from each other. And I just remember screaming, "So what do you really think of me?" And he says, "I wish you were never born." Just what every 13-year-old kid needs to hear, right? So I took myself to his office and I was going to give him his wish and take myself from this earth because obviously, if my dad didn't like me, what was the point? So I started to cut my wrist. And at that point, God brought a song to my head called "I'm Giving Up, Giving Up." And I'll maybe put a link to that song somewhere in the chat or something like that. It's by Brian Duncan. And it goes, "I'm giving up, giving up. I'm never going to give up again. I'm giving up, and I'm hanging on till the end. Got to stop kicking myself around, swimming in a pool of pity. I'm going to pick myself up off the ground and get back to the nitty gritty because it's one step, two steps, and then I'm back on my way. Sitting around's just been getting me down. And that's why I just have to say, hey, I'm giving up, giving up." Um, just, it's a wonderful song. And the beat is just giving up, giving up. I'm never give up again. Never give up again, giving up. Anyway, I have it going on through my head. You can't hear the music. What can I say? Anyways, so that song coming into my head took me out of that immediate panic and that deep depressive state. Thank you, Misha. Given Up by Brian Duncan. It's a great, great song. Um, Let that song be an encouragement to anyone, um, whether you follow Jesus or you don't. It's just a great song to remind you one step, two step, and then you're back on your way. It doesn't take grinding up mountains, it takes a step, then another step. It doesn't mean you have to go huge steps. One step, two steps. Little guys work just as much as the big guys do. So, as I grew older, this happened when I was in about grade 7. So, as I grew older, there were also periods of happiness and sleeplessness beyond the panic attacks and depression. And they would last for days or even weeks. I'd be incredibly creative for a while, and then I'd have no inspiration for a long time. The creativity that I was feeling, I didn't know it, but that was the hypomania. Let's see. What do I have here for paper? Okay, I'm going to draw bipolar for you. This is plastic, but I don't think it's going to come off. So, we've got 4 lines. This is typical. Everybody has good days, bad days. Some are gooder and bad, and same as everybody. Everybody has ups and downs. The difference between myself and neurotypical is you'll have a good day or a bad day, but I will go, well, let's do one. Is that backward? Yes, it is. Yep. 2. There we go. Okay. So bipolar type 1, they will go and they will have an up way high like this, and then they might go down here. Okay. So this is typical, But then there's this. This is the psychotic line right here and here. Okay. So here's the psychotic line. What psychosis means is that you're out of touch with objective reality. It means that you honestly 100% believe that you can fly. I know I've had dreams where I can fly and it feels really real, and I love those dreams. But psychosis, you honestly believe you will. More people will die from bipolar type 1 in their highs because they're doing dangerous things that they truly think that they can do. Down here is the psychotic line where people will think that they are possessed by demons. They will see blood pouring out of the walls. They will see a lot of very scary things. And it's a good thing I'm not monetized because I'm certainly not censoring myself. Type 2 is what I have. So this is type 1. This is type 2. I will have your typical day, but I will also have what's in here. This is called hypomania. Is that the right way around, you guys? Anyway, I believe I can fly. Yes, I love that song. So this is hypomania. Okay. Hypo simply means just under. Up here is full-blown mania, where you're past the psychotic level. Hypomania means you are having a great time. You're the life of the party. You don't have to eat. You don't have to sleep. You are running on pure adrenaline and you can do anything that you want. Yeah, it's written right. Okay, thank you, Crystal. And hypo is not to be mistaken for hippo. So hypomania is where I lived, and I lived in that for years. When I was finished high school and I started dating Doug, my husband, um, I was in hypomania for many, many years. I was easily 2 or 3 years all at once. I would spend a little bit of time in the depression area, but I would spend a lot of time up here. But with bipolar type 2, you'll spend some time up here in hypomania. Oh, there we go. But you'll spend more time in the depression area. Okay. So when I'm having just a regular day, 9 times out of 10, it is somewhat just a little lower than the typical low day. Okay. That's, I have to close that or it's going to dry out completely. So that's where you've got your hypomanic and your deep depressions. Down here is suicidal for some people. Down here is where they live, and that's where panic attacks come. That's where living in anxiety comes. That's where a lot of these scary places that you've been, that I've been, that's where they come from. So, like I said, I think I get it when you guys talk about what's going on in your lives, and I get it. And then there is what's called cyclothymia. I'm going to write this big word. Cyclothymia. Cyclothymia. And that just means very rapid. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. So there will still be times of euthymia, which is this middle part. That's euthymia, EU, like Europe. Okay. And that's typical, is euthymia. But a rapid cycler will have, like today, just up, maybe not past the psychotic level, but somewhere in here in the hypomanic area. And maybe not back down here to the low psychotic area, but again, in the depression area. So at breakfast time, you wake up, it's like, wow, what a gorgeous day. The colors are bright, the birds are singing, the coffee smells good. I've got a pretty cup going on. Everything's good. By lunchtime, I can't believe. Ugh, I just can't. I just can't. For me, that's what depressions look like. They aren't sadness. They aren't a whole pile of crying. I just can't. Um, so I'm talking about my young teen years. And so I would be very creative for a while. When you're in hypomania, you are creative. Most people who are incredible, that typical artistic personality we've all heard about? Um, it is that really, really high, very creative, wild, and wonderful rock stars. And then you know that, oh, I'm just done. Oh, I'm that artistic personality. I'm dramatic. Oh, that's bipolar disorder, by the way. So a lot of our most positive, not most positive, our most popular, that's the word I'm looking for, our most popular celebrities will have bipolar disorder to one degree or another. They may not be diagnosed and they may not need to be treated because maybe they're only in, like, they're maybe just a little above normal, right? And maybe they never get down to suicidal, but maybe they just have days where, or weeks or whatever, that's just not right, you know? And that is still bipolar disorder. So this got worse though. When I was about 16 years old, my dad finally got arrested for his assaulting my sister for many, many years. And my parents finally got divorced. My mom was in this terrible marriage that she didn't know she could get out of. She finally got out when my uncle called and said, okay, he's going to jail. I'm coming to get you. So my mom packed me up from school and we moved. I can't even tell you how many hours away it was that we moved. But it was it was a significant distance. Um, I was really angry with her at the time because in my family, you don't give up. You you fight it through. You push through it. You get it over. You just do it. You don't give up. And I saw this as her giving up. I didn't see it as her abandoning my dad because I knew he was being arrested for something and that was horrible and he deserved to get arrested. My mother and I knew nothing about the abuse. It was hidden very, very well. My dad was a terrible, terrible man. When he was bad, he was terrible. When he was good, he was awesome. It's bipolar for you, right? But he was also an excellent hider of the information. So once my parents got divorced and my mom and I left and moved to this little town in northern Saskatchewan, north central, I guess is what I would call it. Um, I, like I said, I was really angry and I did a lot of crying. I was grieving my family. I was grieving the things that I lost. And I remember being out on my bike and running with my dog and just deciding, okay, being good got me nowhere. I was a good kid. I was a good student, a good kid. I was generally obedient. I was generally fair. I was generally, like, of course, we all have our bad days and whatever, but I was generally that good kid. Um, oh, I want to star this question from Misha. Okay. Remember, Regis, please star questions so that I can answer them later, okay? Because I'm not going to be looking very closely at the chat. So I decided that being bad would be the way I would go. I would quit following the rules and I would quit, all of this other positive stuff. Um, I would quit crying. I made myself quit crying. I turned off being ticklish and I was ticklish. You just had to be this close to me, and I'm going, "Ugh, ticklish." I quit being ticklish. Everything that was from this side was gone because I didn't want anything from this side to be happening. So when I turned off this quit happening as well. It didn't mean I was even keeled, it meant I was numb. I was in that middle, and I really wasn't much of anything. I was just turned off. So as a late teen, I became terribly reckless for my personality. Now, a lot of people will say, "Well, how do I know um, if somebody has a mental illness? How do I know if somebody's dealing with," and they'll name a couple symptoms of whatever. And I'll say, "Okay, what's their personality like? Has it changed?" Because you will have a person who is just the life of the party all the time, but they've their whole lives been that up, happy, life of the party, outgoing. That is their character. That wasn't my character. It was to an extent. I was always happy and happy-go-lucky and all of this other stuff, but it wasn't over the top like some people are naturally. That wasn't me naturally. So I became reckless. I started uh, driving when I didn't have a license. I started dating a guy. Oh, I dated lots of different guys, um, lots of different guys. And I eventually got engaged to a man who was 5.5 years older than me. So I was like 17 or 18, and he was in his early 20s. He was 23 or something like that when we got engaged. I started to neglect my schoolwork, which was completely unusual for me because I was going for coffee with him and the guys. He's like, "Yeah, you don't need to do homework. Don't worry about it. I barely passed. You can do that too." I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes loads of sense. But to me at the time, it did. Um, he isolated me from all of my really good friends. Um, Gwen, my friend who has had that osseointegration. If you don't remember having seen that in the past, you'll want to go down into the deep depths of the archives and look for Gwen and osseointegration. She and I were best friends in high school. I dropped her as a friend because he didn't want me hanging around with her because she was my friend, not one of his friends. So he wasn't hitting me or anything, but as we've seen on my channel in this last month or so, hitting isn't the hallmark of intimate partner violence. Hitting is like the top end of it, or at least getting toward the top end of that. Body Illusion has some amazing um, videos recently, especially talking about her physical survival of a spouse who was physically very violent with her. And Body Illusion, thank you for the courage to share your story. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. So yeah, that emotional abuse though. It's if it's not hitting, is it abuse? Well, I didn't think so. What I have found out since is that that type of abuse, that type of emotional abuse, studies have shown that more than 80% of the time, that type of abuse will become physical abuse later on in the relationship. And it starts from there. You learn to put up with what you're able to put up with, and then it just goes downhill from there. So at the end of the first semester of grade 12, I had yet another major panic attack when I was studying for my English final exam. And like I said, I was a pretty smart kid, really smart, in fact. And I started looking at my notes to prepare for this exam. I didn't recognize a thing. I didn't remember any of the stories. I didn't remember any of the papers. I didn't remember any of it. I didn't even recognize my own handwriting. It was that dissociative. Um, so again, I became instantly hopeless. And I figured that I was such a waste as a human being that the world would be better off without me. I logicked away my family's reactions. I logicked away um, my sister. Well, she's busy getting on with her life. She doesn't really need me around. We never really got along very well, anyways. My mom, she knew what life had been like. She would understand if I wasn't going to be around anymore. My boyfriend, oh my goodness, he'd be just better off without me there. Gwen, these other friends, I'd only lived in that town for maybe just not even a year yet at that point. So they didn't really know me well. So, like, did they really need me around? No, they really didn't. If I left right now, nobody would really miss me. So I sat down on the kitchen floor and I started the same procedure that I had in grade 7. And my dog came and laid her head in my lap and licked the blood off my hands. And she looked at me with those great big brown eyes that said she would be absolutely lost without me. My dog saved my life. So again, I snapped out of that immediate depression and I called my fiance, and he didn't want anything to do with my little girl high school problems. After all, you're just studying for an exam. I mean, is it really that bad? You know, because he was playing video games with the guys, and that was important. So I called an ex-boyfriend of mine. We're still friends on Facebook, by the way, this ex-boyfriend and I. Um, good guy. He treated me really well. I wasn't ready to be treated that well. So I called him, and he drove from 2.5 towns over, but a 40-minute drive or so. And he made it in, 20, 25, 30 minutes or something like that. He broke a few land speed records. And he came and he sat with me in the kitchen. We didn't talk, didn't do anything. We just sat. And that's exactly what I needed at the time. So neither of my suicide attempts were at the period of after a period of deep depression, which included planning. They were each a knee-jerk reaction to a sudden onset of panic and the certainty that those I loved truly would be better off without me. After almost a year of my almost a year after my final suicide attempt, I can get my teeth in. I broke up with that fiance. And I became best friends with a young man who treated me like a person should be treated. He treated me with respect, like I was smart, like I was valuable. We would have conversations deep into the night talking about books and politics and entertainment and life and all of that kind of stuff. Um, he treated me like I was worth actual affection, not just to be used for whatever a girl can do for a guy. You know what I mean? So he treated me with respect. I broke up with that boyfriend, and this new guy and I started dating. And my really outgoing, outrageous, happy personality came back with a vengeance. And that's when, for almost about 3 or 4 years, I slept maybe 3 or 4 hours a night. I would still have the depressions where I just would barely get up and barely, I'd make it to work, go home and just kind of crash into bed. But generally, like 80 or 90% of the time, I was up. I was high on life. I didn't need drugs. I didn't need alcohol. I didn't need any of that to keep me jazzed. I was high on life. So that was great. I would party. I was really skinny because I'd go dancing hours and hours and hours on end. And I would not really need any food because, I'm having too much fun. I don't want to stop for food. I was underweight. I started going to my doctor and I was underweight. Do I look like a girl who should be underweight? No. So, I also put myself in some very dangerous situations that I didn't recognize as being dangerous at the time, but they did end up in me becoming assaulted in a number of ways. So let's skip forward about 5 years. And that respectful young man and I finally got married. He's an engineer, and his steady personality does help to ground my flightiness, but it hasn't stopped it altogether. I am who I am. But the entire time we've been together, he's been an absolute rock. I can literally not imagine what my life would be without him. That's for sure. Um, at the turn of the century, means a different thing now than it did when I was a kid. Our daughters were born just over a year apart. And when our younger daughter was about 11 months old, which, as you might know, pre postpartum depression normally sets in within the first 6, maybe 9 months after giving birth. After that, your hormones are generally kind of stabilized a fair bit. Um, but I fell into another crushing depression. I knew where this type of depression had taken me before, but I had 2 little babies. I had one that was just over a year old and one that was a newborn. And I knew they needed a mom. And I knew my husband needed a wife who was functional and not just staying in bed. He couldn't handle 2 babies and a wife to take care of and go to work and. So I decided that I needed to get some professional help. I figured, it's happened this way before, it'll happen again. I need help. At first, he was really resistant to me looking for help because he figured, if we trust each other enough and we love each other enough, we can talk, he could support me and we could get through it. I've always gone through it before, but I knew that wasn't right, that it wouldn't cure me. And so I went to my first therapist. Well, that therapist sent me to my family doctor and they did all sorts of tests to make sure that there were no tumors or underlying physical illnesses that would cause these types of depressions, like thyroid. You'll notice I have a lump here. My thyroid is swollen. But thyroid can cause depression. So they made sure that that was good and everything else was fine. And I was still dealing with this. So the therapist gave me a 300 question questionnaire. I am not exaggerating. 300 questions for each of us to fill out. Myself, my husband. I think maybe there was one sent to my mom or something like that. I don't remember, but at least for sure, myself and my husband. And so I was diagnosed with my disorder of bipolar type 2. I finally went to my first psychiatrist. It was kind of cool. Once my husband saw the fantastic change that therapy and medication made, he did realize that love alone isn't enough to cure you. He realized that medical psychiatric help is what I needed, and he became my number one advocate for medical psychiatric help. So when I say to people, yeah, you need to see somebody for this, I'm not kidding. I know what it's like beforehand and after. I was so relieved, though, that I had a diagnosis with a name. It wasn't just this great big amorphous thing in my brain that I had no control over. It had a name. It could be treated. It was something that could be taken bite at a time, right? It took almost a year and several tries on a number of different medications for my doctor and I to find a cocktail that gave me relief, but didn't leave me with awful side effects. Like, there's some pretty bad side effects. And 20 something years ago, they were really not a lot of medications to go through. Um, so I just really had to be okay with gaining weight to gain stability. I figured that was a fair trade. And as you know, I'm now twice the woman I used to be. Um, when my girls were 2 and 3 years old, we moved out of the city we lived close to and we moved into this community. And a few months after we moved in, I began and ended up earning a double degree in biblical and intercultural studies with a teaching certificate for English as a subsequent language. So I have a double degree and a teaching certificate, all with a psychotic mental illness. Keep that in mind. Unfortunately, though, one of the medications that kept me very stable had the bad side effect of taking away my short-term memory. Bad timing. It was awful. Once I did finally mention that lack of short-term memory and how frustrating that was, I mentioned that to my psychiatrist. She's like, "Well, why didn't you tell me that?" I said, "Well, I just thought it was my baby brain. After you have a baby, you're just in this fog. I thought that's just what it still was." And she says, no, it was a side effect. So she took me off of that medication and gave me a new one. Lo and behold, it was a side effect. So we had to work to find a new couple other medications to find something that would work without that same side effect. And regarding medications, there's a lot of you out there who say, oh, I don't want meds. I will do my marijuana and I will go with that. If it's working for you, go for it. For me, for many people, especially with schizophrenia, bipolar, um, treatment resistant depression, things like that, medication is not only desired, it's essential because it is the chemicals in your brain that aren't working. Remember, I said earlier it was a physical injury. The chemicals in your body are physical and it affects your brain. So, if you're feeling better, don't go off your meds without your doctor's help. If your doctor says go off your meds, they'll help you get off. But don't go off without your help, without your doctor's help. It means that your meds are working. It doesn't mean that you're cured. Okay? I remember how awful the lack of control over my emotions was, the lack of control over my behavior. I don't miss the uncontrollable crying fits that would last hours and hours and even sometimes days and days on end, or the hours and weeks that I would go with almost no sleep. Sometimes I'd walk through life like a zombie, feeling absolute bone crushing exhaustion. I had mentioned earlier about the anxiety that I had. And what would happen is undifferentiated anxiety for me whoops, for me manifests in the fact that I don't worry about things. I don't panic about things necessarily. I do have panic attacks very rarely now, but I do know what panic attacks are like. Um, but what'll happen is my body will attack my nerve endings and it'll send this electrical current through my body. And you know how when you're in your house and your lights just go, and they kind of brown out and then go back on? That's what it feels like. It feels like my body is just doing a blink. It's the weirdest thing. I'm now on a different medication that physically helps my nerves. I haven't had one of those since. Yes. So I also don't want to go back to the times of fun hypomania. Things like singing at the top of my lungs, running through the streets in the rain. And these are all things that, yeah, kids will do because it's fun and whatever else. But this was a lifestyle for me. Um, Dancing down the street or skipping through the office I was working at. I was the coffee fairy, literally skipping down the hallway through the office. Yeah. Um, Loud, raunchy, hilarious conversations in the middle of my workplace, completely inappropriately. It was awful. But again, it seemed like I was on top of the world, like I was the life of the party. And reality, those are just as damaging to my brain as the deep, debilitating depressions are. And they're just as medically, chemically unbalanced. Okay. Those really high highs feel great, but they're just as chemically unbalanced as the low lows. So while I'm in treatment, I've been generally stable. And I say generally, that means I rarely will have panic attacks. My hypomanic days of uncontrollable spending or risky behavior are very rare, not gone, but rare. And my depressions will only last a day or two. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about depression here. Depression is not sad. Okay. I am not, okay, sorry. Um, Depression is more than just being sad or feeling ugh or ucky or something like that. If your dog dies, if you have broken up with your significant other, if you have had your car smashed into and something's been stolen or whatever, and you're feeling generally violated, yeah, you're going to be sad. And you're going to be sad maybe even for weeks. But again, eventually that will resolve itself and you will get better naturally. Okay. That's grief. It's not depression, it's grief. Depression sun is shining, the birds are singing, kids are happy and laughing, your marriage is great, um, you just got a raise at your job, and 5 or 10 other things that you can think of. Um, hey, mama. um, and I couldn't get out of bed. It was like somebody had thrown a blanket over my eyes. It was like somebody had sucked the air out of the room. And yeah, it was, it's awful. And I still do have the occasional day like that. Like I said, I went through a whole year of that. And then literally one day, poof, it was gone. That is chemical depression. Poof, it's there. And no matter what you do, you can't get rid of it. And then poof, it's gone. Nothing you did got rid of it. It just was gone. And that's simply the chemicals in your brain working funny. Okay. So if you're feeling like yuck and whatever, take your medication, go to therapy, do all of those things, and eventually those chemicals will straighten out and you will be able to fly right. Um, I still avoid places that trigger my PTSD. And even then, I don't have to be as conscious of it as I had been at one point. But like I said earlier, there's still times that I can't drive certain places downtown in the city where I'm close to because it is on the street where I worked. And even turning the corner toward that street today, just talking about it gives me shivers. Anyway, so here's some fun stuff here. Let me see. Yeah, we're almost done. Some fun stuff. Over the years, I've had some strange hallucinations. Yes, hallucinations. Um, the difference between my hallucinations and the truly psychotic ones. So when you are up here and you're having hallucinations, you don't know that what you're hallucinating isn't real. It is real to you. Okay. It's not objectively to everybody else, but it is real to you. My hallucinations happen, and I know that they're hallucinations. It doesn't mean that the feeling or the sensation isn't real, but I know that it is my brain doing something to me, not that it's actually. So I have felt bugs on my skin, and I will look down and I know there's no bug there. But until I actually look at the spot, the sensation is still there. And then I look and it's gone. Um, the first type of hallucination that I would have was I was working in a shopping mall and I would be taking the garbage out in the back hallway, and there was absolutely no possibility of anywhere around, no of any people anywhere around. And I heard somebody calling my name from a fair distance. And I turned around and nobody was there. Boy, did that freak me out. I thought I was absolutely nuts, that I was going to be sent to the hospital, that I was going to be locked up for good if I told anybody about it. That really freaked me out. I've smelled things that aren't there, like toast or oatmeal. I don't know why. Somehow I hallucinate breakfast. It's just weird. But the favorite hallucination that I've had, and I love telling this story, is that a number of years ago, my husband and I went out for Chinese food. And you order like 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever dishes. And one of the dishes we ordered was lemon chicken. So we tasted the lemon chicken. I'm like, honey, what are you tasting? He's like, oh, this is really good lemon chicken. I was having the sweetest, richest milk chocolate you've ever had in your entire life. He got no more chicken that night, let me tell you. Um, so I have been with the same man for 34 years now. On the 15th, it was 34 years that we've been together. Um, we have 2 amazingly smart adult daughters, each of whom does have a mental illness. One of them treats it with medication, and the other one, medication, the side effects from any medication she tried were just debilitating, like just awful. So she treats her illness with behavior modification and lifestyle changes. And for her, that works very well. Um, we have 2 amazingly talented, brilliant, beautiful, How else can I describe my girls? They're amazing. I love them so much. They are just amazing people. Um, they are aware of their mental illnesses, and we demystified it from the time they were very little. And so they don't have to have as many of the same problems that I did at their ages. Um, our house was a safe place to have a mental illness, to talk about mental illness. If one of my girls' friends was having a particularly rough time, they would come over to my house and we would deal with it together. And then they would be able to go home and smooth things out a little bit there. Um, I won't get into details of this young lady's life, but sometime in the not terribly distant future, I'm going to have a guest on who's going to talk about it. And she is just a spark. That young lady is just amazing. I just love her to death. And you're right, depression has apathy involved. You just can't do anything. Excuse me. Even things you used to love, even things you still love, you can't. So I'm an artist. I do jewelry, I paint pictures, I paint bedrooms and all sorts of things. I'm very creative. I sing and I dance and I have a rich life. I love my YouTube channel. I love you all, this community who have um, just come together. I love this community. And I have a steady, joy filled life because of this community, because of medical professionals, including my doctors, my psychiatrists, therapists, pharmacists. Those are all super important. And as we all know, it's not lack of substance that makes you sober, it's connection, right? The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. The opposite of depression is not happiness, it's deep seated joy. And joy doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to feel happy, but you know somewhere inside that there's hope. That joy comes with hope. And it's not depression that kills people, it's losing hope that kills people. So that's why I tell my story. I want to let everyone know that life isn't over when you have a diagnosis of a mental illness. There is hope for a good, fulfilling life. You need to know I don't suffer from mental illness. I live with it. I love through it and I view life through its lens. And I'm not crazy. My psychiatrist said so. So, having told you all of that, connecting absolutely. Um, are there any questions? The one question that I did see earlier is it common for someone to have BPD, DID, OCD, ASD, ADHD, agoraphobia, GAD, etc., etc., etc.? Because just comorbidities. That's exactly what they are. Comorbidities. So yeah, it is not uncommon. I'm not going to say it's common, but it's not uncommon to see borderline personality disorder, that's BPD. DID is dissociative identity disorder. OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder. ASD, I'm not familiar with antisocial disorder, I believe is that one. ADHD, attention attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and GAD, agoraphobia, is when Misha was on my channel a few weeks ago. She talked about agoraphobia and how it simply locks her into this space, whether it be physically a space or whether it be an emotional space. Autism spectrum disorder. Thank you, Crystal. GAD. What's GAD? I'm not sure what that one is. But comorbidities, they're a pain. Oh, they're a pain. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Do, 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 do. There we go. But yeah, comorbidities is something that happens a lot. So you'll find that people with generalized anxiety disorder. Okay, there we go. Yes. Oh, sure, Crystal, fine, be all like smart and whatever else. Um, but yeah, generalized anxiety. I have undifferentiated anxiety disorder. So UAD. Is that sort of like a UID or IUD? Never mind. That's totally off. Um, yeah, I've had Christina on my channel. She deals with autism. Absolutely. Pain, chronic pain is one of the biggest contributors to depression. People with chronic pain, so many times, will have a significant amount of depression in their lives. Um, Indigo's right. Don't go off your meds without medical team. It's dangerous and can have lethal consequences. Ah, you know. Okay. Do I have Hashimoto's? Yeah, people, you need to star these questions. Yes, Hashimoto's is simply a low thyroid. That's all that is. I have a cousin who sees herself as being having a disability because she has Hashimoto's, and I'm like, dude, that's low thyroid. Take a thyroid hormone, you'll be fine. You know, it's not this nasty, nasty thing. Um, there is very little in my life that's too personal, but if it is, I'll tell you. I'll let you know that. Um, let's see what else. Seventh son, I love that. God has a sense of humor. Why else would he put something that runs over your mouth? He's not wrong. Yep. Um, let's see. Indigo's attempt wasn't from panic. It was very planned because they wanted it to end and they felt they could get out of it. Absolutely. Mine were from panic. There are people for whom it is a plan. But the common thread there is neither of us thought that we could continue life and be okay. That's the common thread. I'm proud that I know you too, Misha. Um, let's see. Okay, I'm going to address this because I understand this viscerally. Seventh's best friend in high school for years questioned what was wrong with her because her father essayed her older sister and her younger sister, but not her. When I finally found out what was going on with my sister, I was jealous. Even throughout our lives, even though I didn't know what was going on, I was jealous because I wanted, or I shouldn't say jealous, I was envious because I wanted the relationship, I wanted the attention that she got. I didn't know that what she was getting was what she was getting, but I wasn't being groomed from an incredibly early age like she was. She was being groomed to be his possession, to be his from the very earliest of age. And he was so focused on her that he didn't focus on me. So I was able to grow up and have a much more stable, um, a much more informed childhood. We did both grow up never feeling that we were allowed to question our father. We both grew up never feeling that we would be free from our father. Um, but both, but she grew up and was essayed for many, many years. I wasn't. By the time he started turning his attention to me, he hadn't groomed me the same way that he had groomed her. And so he would try touch me and he would put me into situations where it was um very inappropriate. We would lay down for a nap and he would try to wrap himself around me. And I'm like, go away. This isn't comfortable. He's like, but this is how you nap with somebody. Come lay down. We'll be fine. I'm like, no. God protected me through a lot of that stuff. There were a number of different ways that he would try to touch or try to do stuff to me. And again, I had the spirit inside me to push him off or to, he knew I was too strong of mind and strong of will. And he and I would fight. And it was always described as, well, you two fight so much because you're so alike. And I'm like, I'm nothing like him. But we were both very strong willed, both very, um, we both had a lot of purpose in what we were doing. And so, yeah, your best friend probably was the strongest of the personalities, and the others were groomed at such a time that she was, yes, Indigo, if you feel triggered, please step back. I should have written trigger. I should have had the trigger warning thing going. Um, yeah, it just, she probably had the strongest personality or the strongest mental state of the kids in her family. Uh, Now, having said that, my sister and I came from the same gene pool. We have the same genetic predispositions for mental illness. She was abused significantly more than I was by our father. Um, I'm the one who ended up with a psychotic mental illness. She has ADHD. She has dealt with depression over the years. Um, it's not like she got away unscathed, let me tell you. The girl has a lot that she deals with on a regular basis. But when it comes between the two of us, I'm the one who ended up with a psychotic mental illness. Our other sister, Tanya, same or half of the same genetic DNA, the mental illness half, because our father had bipolar type 1. So he did go into the psychotic level. Where are we? He did go into the psychotic level of thinking he was, thinking things that were objective reality weren't his reality. Okay. So it wasn't that he was trying to believe his lies. He didn't think they were lies to begin with. He thought that was actually true. What he saw as his reality, what he saw as true, he honestly, truly thought was true. Even though the rest of us would look at him and go, okay, yeah, you're nuts. Um, yeah. So let's see. Yep. I'm looking at Misha's. She has a lot of this as well, the full-blown hallucinations, hypo, which also can cause more imposter syndrome. Absolutely. The psyche is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely. Okay. So, is there anything else um, that you would like to know now that I've opened up and bared my soul for the last hour and a half? Um, do you have any actual other questions? I mean, I've thrown a lot of information onto your laps, um, but I also, because I've been presenting about mental health, about my story of mental health, I only present 10 minutes worth of this hour and a half. I present for 10 minutes, so they just get a bare gloss over it. Um, but I have learned so much through other people who have presented their stories of illness and healing. I had heard about, but I had never met a person who has psychotic depression. So she would not be up here at all. She would not go up here. She wouldn't even go up here to the hypo. She would have her typical days, but then she would go down into this psychotic. And so that's how I know what she talks about when she talks about what the psychosis of depression can look like, how scary and evil and absolutely breathtakingly horrible it can be. So I have met a huge community of people in the mental health capacity. So since 2011 is when I started um, presenting about my illness. Um, the guy who runs the program that I am a part of, he and I used to party together when we were both very young and undiagnosed. So he has um, bipolar type 1, and it bipolar type 1 and schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder is a mixture of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So the other side. Okay, so, oh, here, let's use lipstick. Okay, so there we go. Okay, this will wash off. So schizophrenia is here. Okay, it is a thought disorder. It is a cognitive um, reality disorder. Okay, over here you have bipolar, which is a mood disorder. Uh, there we go. That's a B. Bipolar, which is a mood disorder. So right here in kind of the middle is where you have schizoaffective disorder. So bipolar is over here. It is 100% mood. Okay. If I was over here, I would have bipolar type 1, but I would have no hallucinations. I would have no other side effects. I would simply have the highs and lows of my mood. There are people who have that. Bipolar type 1, where you go past the psychotic level, is probably here. Okay. So let's use this. So bipolar type 1, type 2 would be over there. Okay. So bipolar type 1 isn't quite up at the schizophrenia level, but right in the middle here is where you have almost totally equal parts mood disorder and almost totally equal parts schizophrenia or the reality disorder. Okay. The outside of reality disorder. You have no polar type 1. I like that. Um, so with schizophrenia, you will have a lot of the very highs, very lows, but there will be a lack of reality in there. There will also be a lack of reality. What's the other phrase I was going to use? I don't remember now. But with schizophrenia, I have heard it described as living in a um, a waking dream. So you're walking through life. You know how you dream and those really weird, wild things go on in your dreams, and it's like, oh yeah, I can fly, and except you're awake and you're not sleeping, and that's what's running through your head. Sometimes you think people can hear your thoughts through the TV, or you think that the news anchor is talking directly to you, or you see cameras like those security cameras in Walmart or the hospital or whatever, and you know they're following you around. Okay. That can happen both in bipolar type 1 and schizophrenia. And I erased it. So that's where you have this continue. Oh, I'm going to write it again. That's where you have this continuum again. Okay. Now I've got 3 lines. So this is schizoaffective is this one. Bipolar type 1 is this one. And just anything above that is schizophrenia or schizoaffective to some degree. 99% of people with schizophrenia will have some sort of mood disorder as well. Not everybody with a mood disorder will have hallucinations or delusions. A person with bipolar type 1, like my dad, will have had hallucinations, but he will also have the delusion that things are not the way they should be or are the way they shouldn't be. Um, they have delusions of grandeur, so they think that, well, that's bipolar in general. A bipolar high, we have delusions of grandeur. I figured that I was going to become a doctor before I went to Bible school. I figured, okay, I'm going to go to medical school because I'm smart and I'm capable and I've got energy and I've got all of this, that, and the other thing. Forget the fact that I have no money and two itty bitty kids and I would have to go to school for 10 years. And who cares about all that? I can do this. I'm smart. I can do this. That was a bipolar issue. That was delusion of grandeur. It was a delusion of just thought process. That reality was my reality. It was my reality. And nothing anybody could say could take me away from that until I was able to be treated and I could realize, hold it, there are some limitations here. This is why my husband is so amazing. So amazing. He will take me during times of really high highs, and you will have really low lows. And he will just give me a hug and say, honey, that's okay. You need to slow down a little bit. You're taking on too much, or you need to get your butt out of bed. He doesn't even do that. He's like, okay, if you need to be in bed, you need to be in bed. He recognizes that. But then he will say, okay, honey, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a walk. And I always tell him no. One of these days I'll say yes. And I know it would be healthy for me if I did. He's a smart cookie, but he's also incredibly patient. So I'm very fortunate to have him. Um, if there are no further questions, I want to thank you all for being here, for being a part of my life, for being a part of this community. Um, we are a village, and a village is full of a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, with a lot of different points of view, with uh, with a need to be a community. Okay, so it's not like there's one channel that is the hub. We are all the hub of this village. So Body Illusion, her channel is amazing. Like I said, she has been sharing some really tough stuff. And she is a brave woman for sharing that. Crystal, I would love to see you put out some content. And what she likes is her cats. I would love to see more cat videos. They would bring so much joy to so many people. Seventh Son, I don't know that I've seen anything from you, but Blessed to Crochet, her life dealing with fibromyalgia, um, and her love of crafts, in particular crocheting. But being blessed to crochet isn't necessarily a crochet. Well, I shouldn't say necessarily. It's not at all a crocheting channel. It's okay. I've been blessed with this. What are you blessed with? What can you do? Matrix Rabbit is um, he is a man with a real talent for music, for art, for craft like resin and that kind of stuff. He's fantastic. Then we have who else do we have here? Just Serenity Now. I am not familiar with you. I've probably seen you. I'm really terrible with names, but please forgive me for not having spent any time with you. I don't know you. Email me or something like that if you'd like to get in touch with me or find me on Facebook. Mary Lynn Lucas, I know you. We've met. That's my mom. Hi, mom. Um, who else do we have here? Indigo. Indigo is an amazing person. They are a person who's been through a lot, who's done a lot of healing. They've been on my channel a number of times telling their story, and they have a lot more to tell. They love cosplay, and Mary from Blessed Crochet, her daughter Christina, also loves cosplay. Those two really need to spend some time together. I don't know if they have or not, but yeah, they definitely have that in common. It's awesome. Who else do we have? Brian of Brian, poet. Can't remember what the word is. Anyway, Brian Lucas. He is a poet, and maybe it's just from a poet. Anyway, he is a very talented man who, again, has been through terrible things. His life story is tragic and inspirational. And yeah, he's still got issues, but then again, who doesn't, right? I know I sure do. Um, but yeah, this community, this village, Carry On is an amazing woman, brilliant. She is somebody who's an author and an editor, and she is somebody who will have your back no matter what. Um, so yeah, we are a village. We, like I said, there is no one central, you know, but there is a bunch of us who love and support each other, even though we are very different. So have a good night. On the 26th of November, we're going to have a panel. So it's not just going to be me. And we're going to talk about forgiveness. After all of this, we're still going to talk about forgiveness. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about on Tuesday, the 26th. So have a great night. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you next week. Bye bye.